I think I played only 2 push your luck games with a dungeon crawl theme. And what are the odds that I would play the 2 of them the same week? Not very high, I believe, and yet this is exactly what happened. Last week at Origins I picked up Dungeon Run, which is a dungeon crawler, very simple, very linear, very basic, based on a push your luck mechanic. And then at Origins I also picked up Welcome to the Dungeon. I thought it was, I realized pretty easily that it was a mini game with a dungeon crawl theme. Little did I know that it is a push your luck game too. And at first sight it looks fairly similar to Dragon Run, but it's not. It's actually, in reality, mechanically, it is quite different, even though the components are pretty much the same, which is some cards and some tokens. Again, they work in different ways. You have a little rule book here, definitely not a particularly complex game to learn. Tokens representing heroes, the heroes that will enter the dungeon. Each hero comes with a set of 6 tiles representing the equipment of the hero. We have the rogue, the warrior, and the mage. Yeah, nobody says wizard anymore. Mage is just much cooler. Then we have success cards that you give to players to reward them when they went through a dungeon successfully, when they explored the dungeon and survived the experience. And then you have, where are they? The score cards, which give you, no, it's not a scorecard, sorry, player aids. They give you a sense of what's in the dungeon, but they actually also use the scorecards, meaning each player receives one and you place it face up with the white side on. If you enter a dungeon and you're unsuccessful, your hero is killed, then you flip the card to its red side, where you have the same information, but now the card helps you keep track of the fact that you did lose a life, that you failed once in a dungeon. If you fail again and your card has the red side face up, then you're out of the game. And you win the game if you are the first player to collect 2 successes, or if you are the last player in the game when everybody else has been eliminated for failing twice. But how do you fail and how you succeed? Well, let's take a look. First, you choose a hero, but you is not just you as a player. This is not a game where each player gets a hero. It's a game where the entire team potentially controls a hero. You're some sort of invisible deity that likes to play puppeteer with heroes. So let's say that in this round, our group of players will control the barbarian. So we put the barbarian there and we take out the tiles for the barbarian, indicating the equipment that the barbarian has. And the barbarian can have a torch, healing, potion, various kinds of typical barbarian weapons. And then there is the dungeon. The most important thing. You shuffle the dungeon, or better, you shuffle the cards that may or may not become part of the dungeon. You shuffle these cards and you place them somewhere in the play area. Then you can start playing. When it is your turn, you can do one of 2 things. You can pass, in which case you're out of the round, or you can draw a card from the potential dungeon deck and take a look at it. You look at it and you decide you can do one or 2 things with it once you drew it. You can add it to the dungeon, in which case you place it face up in an area that you designate as the dungeon area. So each time that a player selects that option, you are building up the dungeon. Or you look at a card and instead of placing it in the dungeon, you can choose to remove it. But if you decide to remove it, you need to sacrifice an item that the hero is carrying. For example, I decide to sacrifice to eliminate this monster. It won't even make it into the dungeon, but I give him a present, so he goes away, walks away happy. But the thing that I had to sacrifice is one of the items. So as the round progresses, players will make the dungeon become bigger, and also the set of equipment items that the barbarian can equip smaller. So this dungeon crawls as the weapons that the barbarian can use shrink. And there will be a point where players will start passing. Remember, that's the other option. So either you eliminate a card and a tile, or you increase the size of the dungeon, or you pass. And there will be at the point when everybody but one player has passed. And when that happens, the last player that is still in the round that hasn't passed is the one that will play Puppeteer, will control the barbarian as the barbarian goes through the dungeon. So you simply reveal the cards one by one. You take notice of the health points of the hero that you're controlling, and you face the monsters. If you have equipment that can defeat the monster, then you simply use that equipment, you discard the monster that is being eliminated by the equipment. For example, I have a torch that can defeat monsters with strength 3 or less. This is the value of the monster. Then the card is eliminated. Or here we have a monster which is much tougher, has 4, but we use the Warpal Axe, so we can defeat a monster after you withdraw it once per dungeon. And you continue like this, card after card, sometimes defeating the monsters, sometimes taking damage from the monsters. If you do not have equipment that allows you to defeat the monster, then the hero loses a number of health points equal to the strength of the monsters. This would be 6. So that determines if the hero makes it through the dungeon or not. If the hero that you're controlling as the player who was the last to pass, actually the player who did not pass, if that hero makes it through the dungeon, survives the experience of going through the deck, then you won that round and you gain a success card. Otherwise, if you were controlling the hero that gets slaughtered in the dungeon, you collect a failure, which is recorded like this. Very simple. Then you play with another hero, but you repeat the general process of creating a deck and reducing the options and the equipment for the hero, and you continue like this with a hero after another, and the heroes play in different ways from one another. You continue like this with different heroes until a player has collected 2 successes or is the one player that hasn't collected 2 failures yet. So the game is extremely simple, linear, and intuitive in the general rules and mechanics. But before you really master it somehow, it may take a round or 2. Meaning at the beginning, players will probably take a couple of rounds to really figure out how to maximize their odds, how to manipulate the deck in order to get the players in trouble. To figure out the best way of doing that. Sometimes it is to remove a card and a piece of equipment, sometimes it is to place a card in the dungeon. And here's the tricky thing, maybe you're trying to set up a very weak dungeon and then hoping that you'll be the one going through it so you can score and defeat the dungeon. Or maybe you're setting up a super nasty dungeon because you're hoping that somebody else will be the player maneuvering the hero that will become meatballs in the dungeon. But of course there is that bluffing element there, meaning you're trying to subliminally influence the other players into passing or not passing depending on the type of dungeon that you are contributing to create. Because there's an important thing, you're playing as if you are creating the dungeon, but actually you're only creating part of the dungeon. With 2 players, you know what half of the dungeon contains and the other half has been placed there by the other player. So, well, you may not know much. Unless, of course, that the player consistently remove cards, so you may know even better. But with more players, your knowledge becomes even less, and then the bluffing and taking chances element really become key. So, a super simple game, but until players get it, until players figure out a couple of things about it, there is the risk that players will act erratically, randomly. They'll say, oh, whatever, I'll get rid of this, or I'll place that thing. and then the game may feel too random. It doesn't have to be that way, especially players should not take this game too seriously. It's a good game, mind you. When I say don't take it seriously, mean please stay in the spirit of the game, which is providing you with a quick social experience of light-hearted fun and very good, light-hearted, enjoyable social interaction. At the end, this is a game where people will laugh, people will cheer. It has moments of excitement as the dungeon is resolved, card after card. It really is a game that will allow you to have a good time together with your friends if your friends kind of like get in the right mindset. It is not a game that you will appreciate for the mechanical subtleties, for the enormous range of options, for the depth of the design. It is a simple design and an elegant one and a smart one, but again, it is functional to the social experience that it aims at providing, and frankly for me, the game is successful in that. It is a fun, enjoyable game, not a deep one, but a filler, a quick filler, and one that can really create a nice, fun atmosphere around the table. Ideal as a warm-up game during a game night, or at the end of a game night when everybody's exhausted because they play some super heavy civilization game. Then some light-hearted fun, some good laughs, some mocking each other when the opponent gets slaughtered. All of these things are much welcome. And speaking of welcome to the dungeon, a new release by Iello, not very expensive, but very high quality of the components. So definitely 2 mini thumbs up, mini because everything is mini in this game, but the mini thumbs are still up. 2 mini thumbs up for this game. Welcome to the dungeon by Iello.